When it comes to the idea of a person being washed or simply not being that guy anymore, it becomes a knife to reputation. Who seriously wants to advocate for another person just failing to achieve the same standard they previously set? It's embarrassing. I think it is a weird position to take. It's almost like you're bouncing on another man to see if he's still got that dog in him. Frankly speaking, I believe Oda is washed, but I don't want it to be that simple nor that easy. Let's define washed. I like to define washed as a certain skill or trait that was once revolutionary, now ill-defined by being unable to move the same mountains. For me, that is One Piece, but less One Piece and more Oda. One Piece is already great. I don't think Oda can do anything at this point to turn One Piece into an objectively bad series. He's not Isayama. I believe this series is already generational and with more generations currently getting influence as well. However, all of that doesn't say we do not have the right to dig at Oda. The premise of this video automatically implies that Oda was once the king of the world. When was Oda at his peak though? When did he have the most sauce, the most precision, the most aura? To me, it is obviously in the pre-time skip, whether it be the incredibly romantic beats of Skypiea, the emotionally cathartic resolutions in Water 7, or the action and drama of the Summit War saga. Oda was in his bag in the pre-time skip. I've never really seen any author hit so many beats while only ramping up. It's like he hit a black flash and just started putting in work. Water 7 to this day is still one of my favorite arcs in fiction. I don't believe modern day Oda can write that, but why can't he? I think Oda has slowed down. He is not a young man anymore. He cannot tolerate a cruel work environment that enables 5 hours of sleep every day and being hunched over a chair every day. Let's look at some interviews that give us insight into how Oda works to fund to this point that Oda isn't encouraged to write at his prime. Most of these interviews will come from Sandman AP on Twitter. Not only is he the most reliable Oda's angel, but the funniest. To give you an example on how hardworking and how precarious this may or may not be, let's flash back to 2013. Oda was hospitalized in 2013 for whatever the fuck that is. I don't know what this is, nor did my Google search imply it was something serious. Nonetheless, it seems to be painful. However, Oda was still drawing despite this condition. He drew this color spread in a hospital room. Very interesting to consider. Even more, Oda says he would work a lot faster if he had 30 pages in the magazine and not 17. He struggles on how to put all his ideas into a box of just 17 pages. This is likely the most invasive because it is popular now more than ever how crammed Oda's panels really are. This other interview has Oda stress about the importance of having a good fight with a good story. He says he did not want to create a story with just fights because it will get outshined by Dragon Ball. Nonetheless, this argues that fights are supposed to have an impactful place in the story. Interesting to have it because many readers will argue fights in One Piece don't matter, even though they do. With these two interviews in mind, when examining the past 10 years of One Piece, it is clear to see that Oda is not in the same leagues as his first 10 years. The first arc to seriously blow its load too early was Whole Cake Island. In recent time, I've let up on this arc simply because it's not the worst thing ever, but it still nonetheless has its flaws. I was aware of Whole Cake Island's divisive reputation before actually reading it. The week-to-week stretch of Whole Cake Island must have been long and hard. As a One Piece fan, it must have been penalizing to see so many of these developments. Despite all of this, I think it's important to be anal when talking about it.
These turn-of-the-century business jokes doing anything for you? Not really.
Did you use the jokes?
Yeah, they're not landing.
And what better way to talk about it other than Reddit? 9 years ago, in the midst of the Whole Cake Island cesspool of bad ideas, one Redditor wrote an exhausting post basically shitting on the idea that Sanji making Big Mama cake would ever be written. Look at what this guy says. Oda is very meticulous and scrupulously plans and makes sure that everything is all tied together. A lot of events are based on the concept of cause and effect, which is why every time we observe something new, we can always see how it tessellates with information or an event from many chapters ago. It is not just random or conveniently conjured, it's planned story writing at its finest. My guy says this to then explain why baking the cake would not flow into the story of Whole Cake Island. Why? Because Big Mom is still going to be angry with the Straw Hats for ruining her marriage, defeating her commander, and ruining the original cake along with Mother Caramel's picture. The cake functionally solves nothing. The Redditor posited that the audience is supposed to believe that the cake would triumph over Big Mom's crazy nigga behavior and her own motivations to become Pirate King. That doesn't make any sense though. In modern day, we see how this cake literally did nothing. Big Mom ate it, enjoyed herself, then went to capture the Vinsmokes. You see how literally nothing changes? Sanji making the cake for Big Mom is a garbage plot point that is supposed to be a climactic send-off that is literally juxtaposed with Luffy beating Katakuri. Despite all this, the cake doesn't do anything and it contradicts Sanji's previous dialogue with only wanting to cook for his crew. What the cherry on top of all of this is a comment that agrees agrees with a post saying that the theory of Sanji making Big Mom a cake is dumb as hell. Funny enough, he puts his trust into Oda in the hopes he throws these theories in the garbage. Keep dreaming, little man. Keep dreaming. There are an infinite amount of examples we can pull from Wano. I've made my own video tearing into Wano, but the fact is, this arc is the biggest proof of Oda falling off. Just look at this panel. Obviously, this is a lie. This never happened. But why did it never happen? Why did Oda just completely forget or completely drop this entire thing? Who the hell knows? Even worse, it makes no sense in story and is the most jarring thing to wrap your head around. The world government sent ships over to Wano just in case Kaido lost so they can quickly take over and annex Wano. Even though they already sent ships to Wano, they tell the CP0 agents over there to make Kaido win no matter what. Basically, making the ships and manpower they sent over there pointless, right? Well, okay, Kaido ends up losing, so the ships they sent were entirely useless. However, we see Gandhi stating that because they were not going to open the borders, they cannot penetrate Wano and take it over. If it was arbitrary speculation that they were going to drop the borders, why the fuck did you send ships over there? The entire plot point is so stupid and redundant, but I have to ask, why did Oda write it? If the end goal was going to be nothing happened, then why even bring it up in the first place? You could literally just not write it and the story literally wouldn't change. Well, let's just say that plot point you have some magical excuses for and is actually good. What about the Big Mom pirates choosing to take the more dangerous route into Wano just so Oda can write them out the conflict? They could have taken the passage granted to them by Kaido, but they just didn't. Oh, okay, well, you don't like that one? Well, what about Hiyori verbatim lying to Zoro, somebody she stated she trusts, that she doesn't know if Denjiro is alive despite being saved by him chapters prior? Like I am saying, this arc is flipping terrible. Whenever something has a lot of build up, the conclusion must match the hype. Wano was that arc. Whole Cake Island was that arc. There's a fundamental difference from the pre and post time skip. The pre time skip focused on character relationships and smaller stakes, while the post is a complete revolution of the entire world we've come to know. Pre time skip One Piece is the closest thing to a masterpiece. A bit facetious since I don't think it's that good, but nonetheless it's incredible. There is such a melancholic and romantic feel to each arc of One Piece that made it be so generational. When people currently complain about the clutter of One Piece, this is all proportionate to the quiet and more felt panels of the pre-time skip. Similar to his contemporary, Kubo is a genius at making panels speak for themselves. I don't want to say Oda has lost this ability, but Oda genuinely cannot afford to do it anymore. What do I mean by this? Well, originally, Oda was gonna have Kid be a much more prominent character. His bounty was higher than Luffy's, and he also had his right hand be a supernova. Despite this being the intention, Law ended up stealing all the screen time Kid was going to have. So what we are left with is essentially the writer just dropping or rearranging the ideas he had in the story. If Oda had more space to tell his story, perhaps Kid would be an infinitely more fleshed out character and not a bum that I struggle not to insult. Now, one thing I love about Oda's writing style in the new era is how it is more dynamic and capitalizes on the visual medium to do different things with Gear 5 and the world building shots. Elbaf is such a weird example for Oda's worst paneling and Oda's best paneling. To be frank, that's just modern day Oda. He is not that same guy he was when we all fell in love with the story, but that's cool. Oda can still tap into that same guy when it matters. Even though he's not been perfect, I feel like ever since Egghead, Oda has hit a second win. My enjoyment for reading One Piece has partially returned, even though I can't say I'll ever be as faithful or committed compared to when I was reading the pre-time skip. A complex array of restrictions, bad ideas, and awkward presentation lead me to believe that Oda is indeed washed. However, if you see ambitious concepts, fascinating world building, and engaging plot twists, then hey, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that Oda sucks and to give up on him. With all that being said, I will be reading 1174 when it drops next week.